Good afternoon, folks, and thanks for joining us. My name's Tim Wheaton, joined as always by the one and only Frazer Krohn. Frazer, how you doing today, sir?
I'm all good, mate. All good. We were just saying there's not an awful lot to look forward to this weekend, but we've got plenty to break down from the weekend that was, as it were. We
Crazy
had the
enough,
UFC
yeah.
card,
I
we had
mean,
the Bellator card, we had Misfits. Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about it, I'm afraid.
I know, I know you're saying it wasn't a big weekend, but I hate to spoil the party, but Mandy Bohm got a win in the UFC, and it couldn't have been worse. It was an
I mean, let's jump
awful
straight
win.
into it. Let's jump straight into that because I have no idea what happened. I don't think Mandy Bohm had any idea what happened. I don't think her opponent, Kim,
Yeah,
I don't think she had any idea what happened. But what
yeah.
I will say on the matter, just touching on it quickly, Ji Young Kim is a shithouse. She was losing the fight
Yeah.
at the end of I think it was at the end of the second round. She sort of push kicked Mandy Bomb off her after it was a clear break, and she said, "Oh no, I didn't understand." I'm pretty sure I heard her say, I, like, sort of. Now, please don't quote me on this because I don't want to get mistaken. I was listening. But
Mm,
I'm pretty sure she said like sort of communicated that she didn't understand the English that the referee was saying.
yeah.
Don't buy it. I don't buy that. You know, you might okay, even if English is a second language to you and you don't understand anything that's going and you don't understand a single word of English. She's what she's 9-7-2 now.
Yeah.
She knows that when the horn goes off at the end of the round,
Don't don't hit someone.
don't continue to attack your opponent. When your opponent is stood up getting away from you and the referee stood over you both, don't attack your opponent. With the greatest respect to both women, it's not like the crowd was going absolutely wild where you couldn't hear the horn, you couldn't hear the clap, you couldn't. It was a very dull fight until the most action of the fight was post fight.
Yeah. Fight
Simply put,
announcement.
you know, like I say, I still don't know what happened. So, from what I understand, she was losing the fight because, and it's quite clear,
Mhm.
she wasn't listening to the instructions that that her coaches were giving her.
Mhm.
She is coming across as one of the most uncoachable fighters that we've ever seen. Her coaches were literally like, "Do not engage with her on the floor. If you can, when you can, stand up." She had multiple opportunities. She
Yeah.
had double wrist control on Mandy Bomb. Mandy Bomb's guard wasn't closed; it was open, and she just, she was happy to just sit in her guard. She was losing the fight, and she was happy to sit in her guard. The broadcast cut to her coaching team,
Mm.
and her coaching team even said, stand up, stand up, stand up. And then they said to each other, "Look, she's not listening to us." That is worrying signs. Then she kicks her opponent at the end of the second round. Whether that's a point deduction, it's kind of referee's discretion, as it were. But then she needs her opponent at the end of the second round.
Yeah.
It was deemed an accidental foul. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it probably wasn't. I don't think she meant to intentionally knee a downed opponent. Maybe she thought that Mandy Bomb's hand came up. Foul. It was the second foul of the fight, as far as kick after. If we're classing that as a foul, it was a kick after the round, and then the foul at the end of sort of midway through the third. And then it seemed to take an absolute age for the decision to come in because
Yeah. Yeah.
the judges had already submitted their scorecards.
Mhm.
Call me simple-minded. Is it not as simple if she does get the point taken off her for that? Is it not as simple as taking the judges' scorecards that they'd already submitted and just knocking a point off Kim?
Well,
Why did that take 15 minutes?
I think they were as surprised as us that they somehow came to a one of these fighters had a point deduction, and yet we still ended up having a split decision. How dumb was this? They must have I think we calculated it wrong. Do it again, do it again. But yeah, how long it took. Yeah, that was just silly. Like you said, it shouldn't be that hard to add up. What, 90 points? It's the same every time. After
Yeah,
10,000 fights, it's the same thing.
yeah. We're not talking about a 12-round boxing decision here. It was
Yeah.
3 rounds.
Yeah.
Or 2.5 rounds. Whoever you thought was winning that last round, which I'd argue was Mandy Bomb in that last round, she has 10, Kim has 8 for that round because she had the point taken off.
This is what happened when we wanted Mandy Bomb to get a win in the UFC. This is the curse. This is the monkey hand curse. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
Well,
you're gonna get a win. It's gonna be awful. It's gonna be the worst fight in history.
the thing is, was that a good win for Mandy Bomb?
No, it was awful.
the thing, but this is what I'm saying is the win itself dreadful. God, she will have hopefully forgotten about that already. You know, she got the win, she got the win bonus. That is what it is.
Yeah.
But does that now sort of prove to herself, look, I belong in the UFC? So now does she kick on with the confidence of having a UFC win? Because with the greatest respect, Ji Yeon Kim has no. If she's still in the UFC today, I'm pissed off. She has no business being in the UFC. She's got 3 wins in the UFC. Justine Kish, no longer in the UFC. Melinda
Right.
Fabian, no longer in the UFC. I don't think she ever got a UFC win officially. No, she didn't. Justine Kish picked up a few UFC wins. And Nadia Kasim, I think she got 1 UFC win. Yeah, so Nadia Kasim had 1 UFC win and 2 losses. Since then, since October of 2019, yeah, she's lost to some good girls: Alexa Grasso, Molly McCann, Priscilla Cachoeira, Jocelyn Edwards, and now Mandy Bohm.
Yeah.
But before then, she lost to Antonina Shevchenko and Lucy Pudilova. She's had multiple cancelled fights. You know, she's had 7 cancelled fights.
Yeah.
Often against, you know, the same girl every time. You know, Poliana Bothello, Maria Agapova, Alexa Grasso got cancelled because of coronavirus and then was put back on. Obviously, she lost that fight. Mandy Bohm was also cancelled from February of this year.
Good thing we remade it. It was so good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, how could we have lived without seeing this fight? But let's be honest, you know, 33 years old, she offers nothing to the, I don't even know, to the flyweight division.
Yeah.
Done. That's enough for me. I don't want to see any more Ji Yeon Kim because not only did she lose, but she kind of had a tantrum and fouled her opponent as a result of losing, maybe. Possibly.
Yeah. And I think if you foul your opponent, commit to it. Like, just knock them out. Like, come on. If you're gonna cheat, just cheat like you mean it. Now people may be tuning in for the first time and they're wondering, do these guys just talk about Mandy Bohm every episode? Yeah, we do. That's a weird thing.
She's got potential. You know,
Yeah.
There's a lot of people on this card that have potential and Jessica Rose Clark. I really like her fighting style.
I know you do.
The one win that she got against Sarah Alpha was phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know, she timed that knee to perfection, landed on her on the way down. She then used her wrestling against Jocelyn Edwards.
Yeah.
But look at her last 3 losses: Stephanie Egger, Julia Storolenko, and now Lisboa.
They're
All
not top
submission.
They're not top 5 losses, you know?
They're not top
10 losses.
30 losses, top 25 losses, top 15 losses. I believe she was ranked in the top 15 at one point, you know, when she came in, beat Beck Rawlins, beat Paige Van Zandt, then she lost to Jessica Rai, Pani Kanzad. They're not, you know, bad losses, Jessica Rai and Pani Kanzad. Jessica Rai is what she is, but she hit a bit of form.
Yeah.
But to lose 3 straight, all by submission, where she wasn't, you know, the first 2 were quick, you know, 3:44 and 42 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
She never had time to really get into the fight. This fight, she wasn't allowed to get into the fight. There were some good exchanges, but let's not forget, Lisboa is a Muay Thai girl.
Yeah.
And she submitted Jessica Rose Clark. Lisboa looked pretty good. She looked like the smaller girl in there and still managed to get a pretty decent finish. But, you know, Jessica Rose Clark has got potential, but, you know, at 35, she's not a huge star. Let's be honest, she's not a huge star.
But her getting cut from the UFC might be the best thing for her career. Like, she could do a BK. How well would she fit in with BKFC or like a Bellator, you know?
Exactly. With the greatest respect to BKFC, we've got, is it Taylor Starling versus Jade Wong coming up soon? 2 heavily tattooed girls that didn't quite make it in MMA. Yeah. Enjoy a good scrap.
Yes.
Enter Jessica Rose Clark, Beck Rawlins, headlining or at least being champion in BKFC, heavily tattooed, pretty poor ground game when she was in MMA. Insert Jessica Rose Clark. I think that could be her next sort of. Unfortunately, I don't think she's going to be kept in the UFC because, you know, she's not a big pull. She opened up the card. You know, It is what it is. But I think this card, there was, you know, let's be honest, the only talking point from this card really was the Mandy Bohm fight, which was a talking point because it was a shit show, and the top 3 fights where we saw 2 guys cement themselves as the future of the division.
True.
And Johnny Walker. because I need to get your perspective on Johnny Walker. We'll talk about Ian Gary first because that was the fight that happened before Johnny Walker. I need to grab your knowledge on Johnny Walker because I'm still not sure. But Ian Gary first.
Okay, so Ian Gary, he is actually getting better in between fights. The problem is like his highlights were amazing, and a lot of people are negative to him because he's a little bit annoying when he speaks. But no, Daniel Rodriguez, I picked him to win this fight, and at worst, that's a close fight. Daniel Rodriguez is a game opponent who always goes tooth and nail against anyone. Like we're talking about split decisions, close decisions against anyone he meets. He's not been knocked out like that. That is a statement and a half right there. This is a really big deal for Ian Gary. I think if you want to be optimistic about this young man, jump on the hype train. It is time. It is absolutely time. He is competing in a really tough division. Absolutely, especially a wrestler heavy division. However, I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you say, Daniel Rodriguez never been. I don't think he's ever been finished. He certainly hasn't been finished in the UFC.
Yeah.
You look at the guys that he's fought: Gabe Green, heavy-handed; Tim Means, heavy-handed; Dwight Grant, heavy-handed; Mike Perry. He fought Mike Perry to a decision and didn't get caught. You know, Kevin Lee can be heavy-handed when he mixes in the wrestling. Li Jingliang, one of the most heavy-handed guys at 170 with that kind of power that looks like he shouldn't have power.
Yep.
And then he comes up against Ian Gary.
Yep.
Who, you know, like you say, he's kind of coast to a few decisions in his UFC career thus far. You know, he finished his first fight, couple of coasting decisions, finished his last fight, but was rocked in that fight. I think he was dropped in that fight against Kenyan Song. And then he faces Daniel Rodriguez, and he did pretty much what Bilal Muhammad did last week. Body kick, body kick, body kick, body kick, bang, head kick, catches Daniel Rodriguez. It is what it is. It's done. It was done. It was done when he hit the floor, and the follow-up shots are what they are because, you know, you need to, referees these days will take a point after the fight, as we saw in the Mandy Bohm fight. So you just need to finish that fight when you can.
Yes.
But he's 25 years of age. He's 12-0 with 8 finishes.
Yep.
Former Cage Warriors champion.
Yep.
The frustrating thing for Gary is if he wasn't Irish, I think people would appreciate him a lot more and think that he's got a far higher ceiling than he has. But he is Irish, so he's naturally going to be compared to Conor McGregor. He mentions Conor McGregor in post-fight interviews.
Of course.
He's got the same as ridiculous as this might sound, he has the same accent as Conor McGregor. So people are naturally going to make that comparison. He's got the tricolour, you know, he fights in, as ridiculous as it sounds again, he fights in green. He's proud of his Irish roots. Yeah. But he's really, really good. Like, let's be honest here. His nickname, The Future, is apt because I do think he is the future of this division. And they're, you know, the UFC aren't stupid. They're building him well. Yes. They're building him well. They're, like you say, it's a wrestler heavy division. Fighting at welterweight, you know, Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, Bilal Muhammad, Hamzat Chimaev, Gilbert Burns can wrestle his ass off. Yeah. Shavkat Rakhmonov, you know,
but
Sean
if you
Brady.
Sean Brady's there. But if you give him like, let's say, gatekeeper like a Jeff Neal or a Neil Magny, and then Vicente
he called out Neil Magny.
Neil Magny's a fun
fight for Gary, but
it is
fair fucking play to call out Neil Magny. Sorry.
And then let him knock out an old Stephen Thompson, and then we got a contender right there. Those three fights all winnable. I
think he competes for the belt before, maybe not the end of next year, because he
before Bilal Muhammad. Yeah, we all agree.
No, I mean,
he's never.
Yeah, let's be honest. Bilal Muhammad is the next contender for the belt, but Ian Gary probably gets that shot before him because he's got more charisma. I like, you know, we like Bilal. We were talking about him on the show last week. We were saying let's put some respect on his name, but let's also be honest here.
He's not
getting a shot anytime soon. But you know, if you look at the rankings here, updated yesterday, Ian Gary has jumped ahead of Jack Della Maddalena. Ian Gary is now newly ranked at number 13. Jack Della Maddalena has dropped a place to 14, and Michel Pereira is now at 15.
Oh man!
All fights I want to see. But the thing is for Ian Gary is there's plenty. Michel Pereira, sign me up. Jack Della Maddalena, sign me up.
Yep.
Michael Chiesa, not a great wrestler, very good when it comes to the ground. Hasn't fought in a second. Sign me up to that. He called out Neil Magny. I think that's probably the fight to make. Vicente Luque. Imagine that fight. The slick striking of Ian Gary against the brawling style of Vicente Luque.
Yeah.
And then he gets into the top of the division. But if Sean O'Malley is the blueprint for how to build a star when you're in a wrestling heavy division. Sean O'Malley has not fought the wrestlers of the division yet. Umar Nurmagomedov hasn't fought him. Hadn't fought Jose Aldo at the time.
Yeah.
Didn't fight, any of the top kind of wrestling. Henry Cejudo now, Marab hasn't fought any of these guys, but he fought his way up to a contention. Then he fought the striker Petian, beat him. Now he got a title shot.
Yeah.
They're building Ian Gary like they built Sean O'Malley, which to me isn't a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Ian Gary, will he get Neil Magny next, who's a pretty decent wrestler? I can't say that I've watched every single one of Ian Gary's fights. His wrestling might be out of this world, but he's not a Kamaru Usman. He's not a Colby Covington. He's not a Hamzat. He's not a Bilal. That's just, they're elite. He could become as good as these guys, but I don't think he's got that ingrained wrestling. But, he's only 25 years old. Like I say, he hasn't even got his sort of man strength yet. He's still got that kind of boy strength at the moment.
Yeah.
So for me, I put him in there, like you say, against a Michael Chiesa. It's still a jump up in the rankings, or a Sean Brady, a Jeff Neal, a Stephen Thompson, like you say. Keep him away from Shavkat. But that is a fight that I don't see. I could see that fight happening further down the line. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Gary.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
Like I say, 25 years old. I think he hasn't quite got his, like I say, his man strength yet. But when he develops into that sort of man, 170, the difficult thing is it's a big jump up to 185. 15 pounds is a lot of weight. But he's 25 years old. Why not? Why not? The sky's the limit for Ian Gary. I'm not afraid to say that I wasn't wholly convinced. I did watch him in his Cage Warriors days, but not too closely. But now I'm on the hype train. I'm there.
And he's already making good decisions in that he's training in the US. So if he wants to get better at things like wrestling and whatnot, he's already stateside. He trains at Killcliff, from what I can see here.
Yeah. So Usman, Michael Chandler,
great choices.
I think Rashad's probably still, in and around.
Yeah. Not
bad guys to train with if you've got to sort of train your defensive wrestling game.
Man strength I'm going to use all the time now. I'm just going to use that for talking to my friends of like, once you guys grow into your man strength. No,
45 years old, but once you go into your man strength.
It's so good. No, I think there's very good reason to be optimistic and lots of winnable fights still in the division form. But let's move forward to the weirdness, the goofiness. Johnny Walker, just everything in his life is goofy as hell. What is this guy? He robbed Anthony Smith's house, according to the accusations. Why is everything so weird in this man's life? Like, he is a finely talented fighter. He is a mid-level light heavyweight, which means he's top 3 in the world. And then he wins fights in goofy ways. He loses fights in goofy ways. He gets kicked out of the arena. Everything about this guy, he's a cartoon character, right?
I forgot that he got stood in his gear.
Yeah.
In New York as well.
Yeah. Why is this guy so weird? And just like, I don't know. He's not that. Like,
again, this is what I wanted to get your perspective of.
Yeah.
Share your wisdom. Is he a good MMA fighter? Because I don't know.
Not
I
really.
have no idea, because I've seen him have some of the most horrendous losses, the most sort of comedic. He's been on the end of some of the most comedic knockouts.
Yeah.
I've seen the footage of, I don't know what fight it was, but when he kind of rushed across the octagon in his sort of
and then got dropped
early days, and he just got dropped. But every time, and the same thing happened against Jamala Hill.
Yeah.
When he gets dropped, his legs just go, and his head just he
yeah.
Most guys get dropped, even if they get dropped, knocked out clean, they're just timber. But he's
a Looney Tunes character.
He ends up closer to his feet end up closer to his opponent, because he kind of just falls off the line, and his head lands where his feet were.
Yeah. He's just like in Looney Tunes when they dropped an anvil on someone's head. That's what happens to Johnny Walker every time.
He's a Looney Tunes character.
He really is. He's so funny. And he doesn't mean to be. But is he good? No. The light heavyweight division, pound for pound, is probably the worst division overall in MMA. Him winning and losing, trading wins and losses. Yeah, he might actually fight for a title in the next year. It's not saying much. This division's not good.
I just didn't he burst onto the scene. Let's be honest. His
his knee
his
and elbows. That was
yeah,
cool.
his
Just a
knee,
couple of
spinning
cool
back
things.
kick
Yeah.
to spinning elbow, flying knee against
Uh,
Durkinov, phenomenal.
yeah, that was cool. That
Then
was
he
really
ran into
cool.
Corey Anderson, got pretty badly exposed in that one. Then his ground game got exposed against Nikita Krylov. He bounced back against Ryan Spann,
Sure.
and then he lost to Thiago Santos in a
Very bad fight.
boring
Really
fight,
bad fight. Yeah.
boring fight. And then he lost to Jamal Hill, but who is now the
Fine.
champion. So it's not, that's aged quite
Yeah,
well.
that's all right.
Then he beat Iron Kutalaba by rear naked choke. Pretty decent win. Paul Craig, hammer fisted. Pretty decent win. Now he beats Anthony Smith. Pretty decent win on paper.
But here's one of the weird things. We were talking about like Ian Gary shows maturity by training in the US. Johnny Walker left Brazil to do MMA training and SPGI. Like everything this guy does is just like,
but it
man,
seems to have worked. Like, like
I
McGregor,
guess,
who
yeah,
kind of,
right.
clicks with John Kavanagh. Johnny Walker seems to click with John Kavanagh quite well because I think, but again, like I say, is he good? I'm not so sure. He
No,
certainly showed
no.
impressive alterations in his game to adapt from that crazy, I'm going to come out flying knee, cartwheel, spinning back, shouldered strikes, all this shit. But still has that in his game, but just doesn't use it over the top. He'd won the round against Anthony Smith. Then he started throwing in a cartwheel kick. I think he threw a flying knee right at the end of the fight. So he's still got that fun, explosive power. But how far does that get you in a division with Jamal Hill, who's already exposed him to, I'm the striker, I'm the slicker striker, I knocked you.
Yeah.
I think he might have killed him on that night, but
honestly, yeah.
Jiri Prochazka, two crazy ass guys going at each other. I think Jiri's got that edge on craziness, and I think therefore has the edge in the fight itself. Ankalaev and Jan Blachowicz kill him, I think.
Yeah.
I think his next fight, I'm looking down the rankings now. He's joint 5th ranked with Nikita Krylov. Nikita Krylov's already beat him though. It wasn't close from what I remember. Nikita Krylov just out wrestled him for 15 minutes.
And he would do it again.
I have no doubt that he'd do it again.
Krylov grew hands and he would just knock him out now. See.
I'm looking, look, 11 minutes, 20 control time, 3 out of 8 takedowns landed. It wasn't a close fight. I don't want to see that again because it was a boring fight as well. But what I will say is, does he face a Rakic next? Well, Rakic is a pretty slick striker. Nothing, he doesn't overthrow on anything. I think he probably beats Johnny Walker, but then Johnny Walker could land a flying knee and knock him out. I don't know. Johnny Walker, I just don't know. Like I say, I'm glad that you're here because I need to pull your wisdom on whether Johnny Walker is a good fighter. But I'm glad that we've kind of got the confirmation that.
Not really. But I also think there's something about this guy. It was super into spinning and jumping stuff, and then SPGI reeled him in a little bit. And I don't know that was really the right thing. It's like training Tony Ferguson and telling him not to do spinning back elbows. Of like, no, let him do his thing. And same with John Jones with Greg Jackson. Greg Jackson was like, do the standard stuff, but do your spinning back elbows, do that stuff because you need to stay creative. So it's like they're trying to make him a very technical fighter when he's naturally not. But you need to find the exact balance. He can't be too technical and he can't be too silly, but he should be doing both in every fight because that's what he wants to do. That's what he's quite good at.
For sure. And it's kind of, it's like, I think that's just what SPG Ireland do. Because if you remember when McGregor burst onto the scene, it was jump spinning back kicks, it was wheel kicks, it was this, it was that. And he's completely right. I don't think he threw a single one of those against Dustin Poirier the last time. I mean, we can't really compare McGregor, anymore because he's completely changed. He's become very conservative because of his cardio issues. But Johnny Walker's never really suffered, apart from when he was out wrestled by Nikita Krylov. He's not suffered with a cardio issue. So it's that kind of, have they told him, look, make sure you're winning the round, doing the thing, he smashed Anthony Smith's leg to bits. Really good work.
He doesn't have cardio issues.
Caught, he was caught a lot by Smith. It was.
Well, he doesn't have cardio issues because he's exhausted from the first second of the fight. So the first second of the fight is the same as the last
walkout. He's dancing too much on his walkout. He's got all the lactic acid buildup, and
he fights like he's dead from the first round. Oh yeah, he doesn't have cardio issues because he doesn't move.
Exactly. And as far as Anthony Smith is concerned, I don't want to see him hang it up yet. I think he's got one more. He's a legend of the game. He's got Anthony Smith. If he retires tomorrow, he's had a phenomenal career. Let's not forget, he has a strong case that he could have been the lightweight champion of the world, the light heavyweight champion of the world.
Absolutely.
He got kneed pretty badly against John Jones.
Yes.
Sucked it up. Is what it is. Bang, I'm back. I don't care. You know, I got kneed. I was a downed opponent, knee. I could have gone down in history as the light heavyweight, the person that broke John Jones' streak. Yes, it would have been by disqualification, but that could have been me. He didn't.
Yep.
He you know, he showed massive heart in that fight, carried on fighting, lost a decision to John Jones. But then he bounced back against Alexander Gustafsson. Then he lost to Glover Teixeira. Then I lost to then he lost to Rakic. Bounced back with a couple of wins. Lost to Ankalaev, and now has lost to Johnny Walker. But what I will say is, I want to see him fight once more. He's still a really good fighter, Anthony Smith. Really good fighter. He hasn't got. He's not a title challenger. He's not. I don't want to see him become a gatekeeper. That's the thing. At 34 years of age, but he's an old 34. 36-18, his record. I don't want to see him become a gatekeeper. And most importantly, he's got a career lined up. He's a fantastic podcaster with Bisping.
Yeah, he is good.
He's a fantastic analyst for the UFC as well. So let's be honest, he's not going to struggle for work post fighting career, because he'll go straight into the analyst. He'll be on the desk for fight nights. He might even be on the desk for a couple of pay-per-views. Still got his podcast, and he's still going to be training at Factory X. But I don't want to see him become a gatekeeper and just pick up loss after loss after loss after loss. I think he's got one more in him. Maybe against, you know, a ranked opponent, Justin Jacoby, Jimmy Crute, maybe Khalil Roundtree.
It's gonna be hard to find him.
Fights, but
it's gonna be so hard to find him someone that he can beat. In all honesty, like maybe a middleweight making their debut. You know, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. And let's not forget, he did have a career at middleweight as well. You know, he used to boil.
I don't know how he did. How did he do that? He's big for light heavyweight.
Big guy.
Yeah.
The same with Thiago Santos. Both of them, you know, they fought each other, didn't they? And then both went up to light heavyweight. I was like, oh, fuck this. I'm not killing myself to get down to 185 anymore.
So how about this heavyweight absolute bruiser, absolute banger? Jailton Almeida, undefeated since 2018 with a 100% finish rate, 19 wins, 7 via knockout, 12 via submission. And in the UFC, he's only had a couple fights go to the second round. He's finishing everyone in the first. Like, there is reason.
One fight go to the second round.
One
and
fight,
the Contender Series fight.
That's insane.
In the UFC, this is
super impressive. Incredible work. Made it look easy against a game opponent. Like, this guy went 5 rounds against Alistair Overeem. Like, it is very impressive how good Jailton Almeida looked here. It's just a matter of what we do in the future. How fast can we get him into that top 5 conversation with your Tom Aspinalls and other guys like that? Like, what do you think of him? What do you make?
Well, to touch on your point of he's only made the second round once. Yes, he has only made the second round once. However, in that fight, the first round, landed 2 out of 3 takedowns, secured 4 minutes 45 control time, and received just 3 strikes.
Yeah.
He outlanded his opponent in that fight. Total strikes 89-3.
Yeah, it's a good one. That's a good fight.
Significant strikes 45-1. So yes, he made the second round, but let's be honest, it's not like he had a back and forth absolute war in that first round. He pissed it and then went to the second round and finished it. He is the future of the heavyweight division because he is so good. You know, 31 as a heavyweight.
31 heavyweight.
31. That's 24 in real divisions.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. The only thing that I think may play slightly against him. Well, let's talk about the performance. Jairzinho Rosenstruck, we thought this would happen. You know, we've seen him be outstruck before by Volkov. We've seen him be out wrestled by Curtis Blades.
I know.
This was always going to happen, in my opinion. No, I picked Almeida by, I think, second or third round sub.
Yeah,
it's just golf's in class. And you know, I don't think Jairzinho Rosenstruck, once he got choked out, he kind of just, you know, he's obviously zoomed in on him, and he kind of just looked like, yeah, I'm frustrated, but I couldn't do anything, and that's just his go-to. Look,
yeah,
Parker Porter, rear naked choke. His next fight, rear naked choke. His next fight, ground and pound from the back. His next fight, this fight, rear naked choke. He's got a move that is the Ronda Rousey armbar. He's got a move that he does, and it does it really well.
Yeah.
But no one can stop it. Everyone knows what he wants to do. Expose your back to him, and he'll snatch your neck. And yet, no one's been able to stop it. He's a phenomenal, phenomenal talent. And he's, looking at the heavyweight rankings, he's now ranked. He's gone up in the rankings, of course. He's now ranked in the top 10 at number 9.
Great.
What I will say is that the only thing is, if you look at the top of the division, John Jones, Cyril Gane, Sergey Pavlovich, Stipe Miocic to a degree, Tai Tuivasa. These are 265 guys.
Yeah.
He weighed in at the weekend 232.
Yeah, he might actually benefit from going down to 205 because that division is so thin.
Sergey Pavlovich, look at how easy he stopped Curtis Blades' takedown. And Curtis Blades is a fellow 265er, probably weighed 280 on the night.
Yeah.
Jailton Almeida, don't get me wrong, I think that he's skill for skill, I think he's one of the best in the heavyweight division, But it's how much is that size going to play a factor in him maybe not being able to get let's say, for example, it won't happen, but let's say he gets a Pavlovich in his next fight.
Yeah.
How much is that size going to affect him not being able to take Pavlovich to the ground? Just a simple size thing. A Tai Tuivasa, I don't think he called out Tai. I don't think Tai Tuivasa's got the wrestling or the ground game to deal with Jailton Almeida. He's got the size to deal with him, but I don't think he's got the wrestling and the ground game.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I think he beats Tai Tuivasa, and I think that's the fight to make.
Yeah.
Tom Aspinall, more his size. Tom Aspinall, I think he weighs in. Tom Aspinall does weigh in heavy, but he's not your conventional big, thick heavyweight. Like Sergey Pavlovich probably weighs 280, 285 on fight night, most fight nights. Stipe Miocic is a good size for Jailton Almeida physically, but like you say, I think he'd benefit from maybe going down to 205. And you look at that 205 division, like we're talking about with Johnny Walker. I think he beats Walker, he beats Krylov, he beats Rakic, he probably beats Jan Blachowicz. Ankalaev's a tough fight, and so is Yuri Prochazka.
Yeah.
But he beats these Jamala Hill. We haven't seen great wrestling from Jamala Hill. We saw great defensive wrestling, but it's a different game when you're in there with Jailton Almeida. I think he benefits from going down to 205. Do I think he'll go down to 205? No, because he's doing so well at heavyweight. Why would you bother? But when he gets to the upper echelons of the division, it could be difficult. Rosenstruik weighed in at what?
He's probably
265.
Size. Yeah, so, he's good. He's good size.
But he's a kickboxer. He's learning defensive wrestling for MMA. With someone like a Sergey Pavlovich or a Curtis Blades, these guys are, lifelong grapplers who also have a size advantage. So I think we saw sort of from this UFC card, I think we saw two sort of futures of divisions, Ian Gary and Jailton Almeida. Even if he never realizes a UFC title, he's going to be in and around the top 5, top 3 for a good few years to come, in my opinion.
I absolutely agree with you. So we have some fun boxing and some meaningful boxing coming up this weekend, but I understand last weekend we had some boxing. And KSI...
That is generous. That is generous. To call it boxing is very generous, Tim. Very generous.
KSI and his brother got a win on one of the DAZN Misfits cards, and then called out Tommy Fury. Seems like a great fight to make, in all honesty. That is the right level, but bring us up to date. What did you see in this?
So I had the pleasure of covering this card for MMASucka.com, covering the results. Oh, wow. It was a long night. Long night, And this was a long night because we also had the UFC on at the same time. So I was trying to follow Misfits and DAZN, but watch the UFC. This is not boxing. Joe Fournier, the guy that KSI fought and defeated by second round knockout, if we can call it that, we'll go into the knockout in a second, is not a professional. He's 9-0 as a professional boxer. He's a professional boxer on paper only. This guy has once in his career fought a guy with a winning record. He was banned for drugs for PED usage and somehow still managed to fight, and it's still gone on his record in the Dominican Republic. That's it. He fought David Haye on David Haye's comeback fights, lost. That was an exhibition fight. KSI is. I've seen a lot of sort of YouTube analysis of KSI, True Geordies, your Wade concepts say, oh, look at the improvements that he's making. KSI is dreadful. I don't mind KSI. I've really gone off him after the whole sort of racism angle about a month ago with the Sidemen and whatnot. But I don't mind him. He's doing his thing with the boxing. He had the 2 fights in one night against 2 guys that had never thrown a punch in their life. It's all gearing towards a Jake Paul fight. Yeah. Now, what I'm seeing at the moment is Jake Paul absolutely kills KSI. He fights. If you've never seen him fight, he fights a lot like Michael Venom Page. They both train out of London Shoot Fighters. It's hands down. It's side on. It's in and out movement. It's explosive. It's single pop shots, and then leads to a big overhand. Mm-hmm. What happened in this fight is he threw a big overhand, kind of missed, got an underhook somehow, went to throw another big overhand, missed that, and landed a pretty sweet Rodtang-esque elbow.
It really was an elbow, wasn't it?
Like there's a really good elbow. If this was a Muay Thai or an MMA fight, you're thinking KSI's got a lot of potential here.
But like, it wasn't like a boxing where like it was a bit of the wrist or a bit of the forearm.
Oh no.
It was the elbow.
It wasn't sort of like a cuffing glove shot. It was, I've missed so badly that I'm now falling forwards and landing the elbow. It's going to be a no contest. I don't think it'll be a disqualification because it was unintentional.
It should be a no contest. It was an illegal move. Like, he might as well have headbutted him for, that's against the rules. Although that was cool. That was great to see.
Yeah. The thing is, I don't know, because I think these are classed as professional bouts, which I have no idea how any of these guys got a license. But the thing is, I don't know how it works with regards to who sanctioned this fight. So will it go down as a no contest? I have no idea. But he then sort of, Tommy Fury got in the ring. Tommy Fury eats KSI alive. If you saw any of, I've watched all of KSI's quote unquote fights. Mm-hmm. He's fought nobody that can throw a jab. No one he's fought has ever thrown a jab in a gym by the looks of it. This Joe Fournier guy supposedly put some videos on social media and has sped up the footage of him hitting pads. It tells, because KSI would throw a jab out there, Fournier would try and counter, and by which time he'd even thought about the counter, KSI was already out of range. So these aren't professional fights. On paper, Joe Fournier 9-0 as a professional fighter. There's guys in your local gym that train twice a week that could put Joe Fournier out quicker than KSI. KSI has pretty much dedicated himself now to being a full-time professional boxer, supposedly. He hasn't got a normal 9-to-5 job where he has, I'm sure he's got different things that he can't train full-time and whatnot. Mm-hmm. He should be 10 times better than he is. He's dedicated himself to this for a few years now.
Yeah.
And he's falling over his shots. He's throwing big looping overhands that, if they land, they land. But I'm pretty sure if 90% of people throw a big overhand, they land on their opponent flush, who let's be honest, has no business being in a boxing ring. It's gonna rock them. It's gonna wobble them a bit. But
this is the thing. Boxing is like very hard to learn. Like, it looks like it's just punching, but it's not. And if you put an athletic person in boxing for the first time in their mid-20s, they're actually going to really struggle to pick up the basics. If you didn't start boxing at like 15 or earlier, it's going to feel kind of silly. And that's what KSI looks like. Like, he's done this for more than 3 years or so, and he's just barely gripping on the basics. Whereas Jake Paul surprisingly really picked up this quickly. Logan Paul and KSI very much on the same level of like, yeah, these guys are big and athletic. They're not boxers,
Yeah, exactly. If that's the thing. They're big and athletic, so they've got a bit of an engine behind them from, college sports or whatever, and they have the ability to maybe pick up things quite quickly, and that they've maybe got some fast twitch muscle fibers ingrained in them, as it were. Jake Paul, he's not a boxer. He's a shit boxer. but he is not a bad guy who's been only learning for
2 years,
2-3 years.
Exactly.
He does he's got a jab. He knows how to clinch when he needs to clinch. He's got a bit of an idea with range. KSI is he stands in a karate stance, and he's obviously sort of copying the MVP stance. MVP's been doing this since he was, he's been in a karate stance, probably bouncing up and down on his toes since he was 4 or 5 years old.
Yes, and
it shows. He is a master of range. He gets in, does his work, gets all the way out. He cuts angles like we've pretty much never seen before. Even Stephen Thompson doesn't kind of cut the angles that MVP does. Yep. Similar style, the side-on karate style. But he doesn't cut the angles like MVP. He doesn't get in and then go past his opponent and cut the angle. Thompson is very much in, do his work, out on the same angle, in, do his work, but he's too quick for his opponent to do anything about it. KSI is trying this, but he's falling over his own feet. He's wildly out of range at times. And like I say, no disrespect to him, because he's doing, he's pretty much created the influencer boxing scene. But
yeah, true.
What we did, we had 2 guys who are a combined 400 pounds on this card. Like,
I don't know.
At what point are we? And halfway through the fight, apparently they had to tape one of the guy's shorts up because his shorts were falling down. Stop taking the piss. Like, I watched Ngannou versus Krohn. I actually watched on YouTube. One of the worst things I've ever seen, and it's not just like, you're signing these guys up. There should be some sort of agreement that they have to spend at least 10 hours in a boxing gym before stepping into it, because we're wasting people's time. There was a card that went out at the weekend, 30-23 on all 3 scorecards. That's across 3 rounds.
All of the fight. This is dumb.
A 10-7 and 2 10-8s, maybe. The Korn versus Ngannou, I don't know who these guys are. I don't know where they found them from. Was one of the legitimate worst things I've ever seen in my life. It was a way. I like I say, I streamed it on YouTube. I stopped watching it after halfway through the second round, because these guys have never thrown a punch in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. You can tell, because there was all arms. They were square on.
Yeah.
And they were landing on each other. But if you can land on a heavy bag if it doesn't move, it's ridiculous. The influence of boxing has clearly got a part to play in combat sports, combat entertainment. Let's not call it sports, because these guys aren't sportsmen. There's clearly a space for it. But when you're putting on fights like fights like this, and fights with people that have never thrown a punch in their life, let's stop it. If you're going to do these influencer cards, they need to be competitive fights. They need to be well matched fights with people who have got, because there are people in the influencer scene that have got skills, that have got, they're not boxers. God, they're not boxers, but they know how to throw a punch. They know how to defend themselves. They might know how to try and set something up. Let's do that. Let's not put these random people that people have never heard of because they've got a big following on TikTok or Twitter. Let's not put them on any. Let's not give them a platform to box, because it might think, you might then have 2 people jumping in the ring saying, a white collar event. I've never trained, but I've seen these guys. I've got to be better than that. It's dangerous more than anything.
But they might be right. I might be better than those guys. Honestly.
Honestly, I think you could find 3 people in the local shop that are better than the guys that fought the other night. Mm-hmm. And just going back to KSI, I think it will be a no contest, but
probably, yeah.
It doesn't matter. He'll go on to fight Tommy Fury next. It doesn't matter. The no contest doesn't matter for KSI, because, like I say, on the night, how the referee missed it. He was stood right there. He landed the elbow, knocked Fournier out cold, eyes open, out cold.
Yeah,
and he got the viral moment on the night. And for people that don't follow the sport and just follow KSI, they will have seen him get the knockout, and that's that. He moves on to the next one. They won't read about the fact that it might be called a no contest. They won't read about the fact that he did land the elbow that kind of stopped the fight, as it were.
Just doesn't matter.
They just see KSI stood there with this fake belt and getting his hand raised. It's good for KSI in a way, because because he gets the win, he gets the viral moment, as it were, and he sort of moves on to the next one. But it's not boxing.
Speaking of getting into boxing, some real boxing here. This weekend's got a big one. One of the lineal titles will be on the line. In one fight, we're competing for the WBA, WBC, IBF, WBO, and the ring lightweight titles. As it feels like I'm surprised these two haven't met already. Devin Haney and Vasiliy Lomachenko. Help me break down. What are the stakes? This is a really big one, isn't it? This is perhaps pound for pound, top 3 at least. What are we fighting for this weekend?
I mean, phenomenal fight. I'm glad these guys, they're making, in the lightweight division, they're making the fights that we want to see. Stevenson is now in the division. He's going to be the boogeyman in the division for a while. Teofimo Lopez just moved out of the division to move up a division to fight, your Regis Prograis, your Josh Taylors, your Jack Catteralls. This fight, Vasiliy Lomachenko, 17-2, lost his debut, I think, or lost early on in his career. Then he lost to Teofimo Lopez. He's bounced back with phenomenal wins. But Devin Haney is different. He's 24 years of age, 29-0. Just coming off 2 fights against George Kambosos Jr. We didn't need to see that second fight because this is what we need to outlaw, rematch clauses in boxing, because there was no need to see that rematch, because the first fight wasn't close at all. But
can I interrupt you for 1 sec?
You can.
We just got news. This is breaking. This is just now. They just announced Francis Ngannou signed with the PFL. Okay, what do we talk about? Okay, keep talking about boxing, and then I'll get the scoop, and then we'll come back to this.
Boxing's done. Yeah. So Devin Haney, he's the undisputed champion of the lightweight division. You got Gervonta Davis, you got Ryan Garcia, you got Isaac Cruz. A really, really solid fight. We've also got Katie Taylor back in action in Dublin this weekend against Chantal Cameron. But Francis Ngannou signed for the PFL.
Okay, so here's the scoop. So according to the New York Times, this deal gives Ngannou equity and leadership roles in the PFL. He's expected to fight in the promotion's Superfight pay-per-view division next year, while competing in boxing this year. The PFL deal is MMA only. His boxing plans will be announced at a later date. His PFL debut opponent date wasn't announced just yet. Also, according to the New York Times, Ngannou will become a chairman of the newly launched PFL Africa, and will serve on the company's advisory board to represent fighter interests. And then he will be with Ariel on this show. On his own show, weirdly enough. I thought it was on MMA Sucka Podcast, but no. Francis Ngannou will be on. Actually, by the time this goes live, he'll probably be already through it. But yeah, so that's PFL, and then still can box on the outside on the advisory board, launching PFL Africa as well. This guy ticked every box he wanted, I bet.
Wow, that is amazing. I mean, to get it, like you say, breaking news when we're on air, as it were.
Yeah.
That is huge. PFL have got to have, I think they probably will pay him slightly less.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, he's getting what he wants. He's now the face of PFL. Simply put.
Yep.
Signed an exclusive global MMA strategic partnership. Now, he won't make his pay-per-view debut until mid-2024, like you say.
Sure.
But he's going to have a boxing fight this year. He's pretty much got what he wanted. He wanted to have a sort of co-contract, as it were, that allowed him to box and allowed him to
fight
and allowed him to fight in MMA still.
Apparently, there is still plans. He's will have an opponent this year in boxing, but so that's great. He's really ticking every box. And then you can see they're launching PFL Africa. The thing is, I think we can look back. Francis Ngannou is a person who bet on himself from the moment he stepped out of his village in Cameroon. He's bet on himself every single time, and it's worked out for him. Look at how far this man has come. This guy was sleeping in parking lots in Paris and still believing in himself and made it this far. And now he's making sure that people at home, he's launching PFL Africa to benefit his people. The mark on this sport will be undeniable when we look back in 10 years of how important Francis Ngannou was.
Equity owner of PFL Africa. That's huge.
Good for him.
Like you say, we'll look back and think Oh, look at probably the hardest hitting heavyweight we've ever seen. But he's not only the hardest hitting heavyweight inside the octagon. He's a heavyweight now outside of the octagon for the PFL. This is a huge scoop for the PFL. Where are the PFL getting their money from? Because, like I say, I don't think that he's going to be the biggest. You know, the PFL probably didn't offer him the most money.
No.
To be honest, I don't think they. You know, they've got huge. Kayla Harrison probably on a lot of money. They give out $1 million every or what
every
$6 million, $7 million.
Yeah, they give it
every
a lot.
year.
Yeah.
Jake Paul doesn't come cheap.
No, that's true.
Now, what I think is that Francis Ngannou may box under Jake Paul's MVP promotion.
Oh.
Because now you've got PFL and Jake Paul, Francis Ngannou and Jake Paul.
I think you're right about that. That's really good. I think you're absolutely correct. You know, that's a good one.
And maybe even co-promoted by the PFL.
Yeah, why not?
This is very exciting. I'm excited for Francis. I'm happy for Francis Ngannou. He'll be fighting on DAZN, so that'll bring more eyes to him. You know, PFL is on DAZN. Who else has a DAZN deal? Anthony Joshua.
Come on, let's get it. Sign that. Oh, man, this is it. This is a big deal, and he's working PFL Africa. Like a lot of former fighters, like Jorge Masvidal or Khabib Nurmagomedov, left and would go and start their own promotions just to like keep busy in retirement. Francis is there. Francis is already doing it. He's making sure everyone around him benefits. This is great. This is huge news here. What else do you think? I don't know who's going to fight in the PFL. The PFL heavyweight division. He'll beat anyone in that division. It doesn't.
Yeah, for sure. But it's who cares?
I
just want to see Francis Ngannou knock people cold. You know, it's what's interesting for me is they're taking over the UFC. We've already established that the PFL are now the second behind maybe one championship. Well, obviously the UFC is number one. One championship is number one in Asia.
Yeah,
PFL is number one in Europe.
Yeah,
in my opinion. Now they're they're breaking into PFL Africa. That this is something that should have been on the card for the UFC years ago. They had 3 African champions at the time, African-born champions at least. Ngannou, Adesanya, Usman missed a trick because now Ngannou's with the PFL. Usman's not going to be the champion, I don't think, ever again. And Israel Adesanya is the champion, but it's difficult. They're breaking into new territories. They're doing the tournament style is what people enjoy. The PFL, and to get the scoop, there was talks of Francis Ngannou being bare knuckle. There's talks of him going to Bellator. Well, come on, there's talks of him potentially signing with the UFC. 2024, he'll make his MMA debut, which is a long time away. But he's going to have a boxing match. This is phenomenal stuff. I think I'm really excited for Francis Ngannou, and I think it's the right deal to do. He now gets he's got his MMA contract. That's written. That's done. That's confirmed. 2024 will be where he makes his debut. He's got his boxing contract. He's contractually allowed to leave MMA to go and have a boxing match later this year. It's what he wants to do. Got obviously a big stake now in the PFL Africa. Strategic, I can't remember the wording, but strategically involved in the super fight division. So when you say you don't know who he's going to face, PFL's pay-per-view super fight division, I think he's probably going to be on the same card as Jake Paul and Kayla Harrison. Because Kayla Harrison isn't in this year's tournament. She's only there for super fights now.
It's true.
Let's not forget the likes of Fabricio Verdum are on the books at the PFL.
It'll probably be Verdum, in all honesty. It'll just
legend of the game. He's a legend of the game. So
UFC champion, all that stuff.
You can pitch that very, very easily. There's plenty of fighters out there, heavyweight fighters out there, that Ngannou could, the PFL could sign for the super fight division for one fight on a one fight contract to fight Francis Ngannou. I don't know who's putting their hand up to fight Francis Ngannou, because I certainly would be. I'd be ignoring my phone I would not be picking up. I'd be turning my phone off. I'd be telling my agent, don't pick up the phone from the
No, but
PFL.
I'm not
I
fighting
don't
France.
care if it's $10 million for
Yeah.
2. I'm not getting knocked out. Simply put, I'm not getting knocked out. So yeah, really pleased for Ngannou.
Yes. This
Great
guy,
to have this sort of breaking news on the podcast as well.
oh yeah, on air. This is what it's all about. But this is the thing. He got what he wanted. He wanted it. He wanted to fight MMA and boxing at the same time. Got it. He wanted to represent the fighters. Got it. He wanted investment in the future of African MMA. Got it.
Now, is that a bit of a sign to other UFC fighters that the grass is potentially greener on the other side? You know, if you're not kind of getting what you want in the
Yeah.
UFC at the moment, the PFL could offer you something that you might, for some, Dana White allowed McGregor to go and have a boxing match and didn't allow Ngannou.
Yep. Absolutely.
Ngannou's now left, got his sort of got his wish, as it were, and now look, he's like you say, he's got his boxing contract, he's got his MMA contract, he's got stakes in sort of PFL Africa. He's the face of the PFL now. He was up there with the top sort of 5, top 10 faces of the UFC. But for Francis Ngannou to now leave and sort of prove, look, it's not all about the PFL.
Yeah. Incredible.
Certainly could throw a couple of spanners in the work for the UFC going forward.
And we don't know all the details on the contract for like how much it supports his opponent or what kind of like union they have. But like Ngannou told in that interview, he said, I came to the negotiating table with the UFC with like 6 ideas. I knew they weren't going to do all 6. And it seems like the PFL here have announced 3 of those ideas. He gets to be a director of the UFC. He's a co-owner in their Africa stuff. And that's great. Like, and this also speaks to just how impressive, if you have some leverage, you should use it in the free market. Because someone
100%.
like an Igor Vorchenchin, imagine he went to the UFC or Pride FC and was like, yeah, I want you guys to invest in the Ukraine. Both of them would have said, can you get the hell out of my office? We're not doing that.
Exactly.
France, everyone picked up the phone to try to phone Francis and make a deal, right?
But he did what everyone should do is he failed. He came, but his life story is phenomenal.
Yes.
We won't go into it now because we haven't got 4 hours. But homeless, boxing gym, MMA career, knocking people dead, failed.
Yeah.
Badly beaten by Stipe Miocic, badly exposed. Had it faced his own demons against Derek Lewis, bad fight. Rebuilt himself, beat top guys.
Mm-hmm.
Beat Stipe Miocic in convincing fashion, the guy that had dominated him over 25 minutes. Beat his former teammate and opponent, Cyril Gane. He shot. What's the word I'm looking for? He tried. He shot his shot, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get, like you say, 6 points, 7 points from the UFC. They turned around and said, no, look, you're unrealistic.
Yeah.
I don't think he was too bothered. To be honest, if he was bothered, he would have just sort of done whatever the UFC would have danced to the UFC's tune, as it were.
Yeah.
Not anymore. He's. It's a sign of things to come, I think, for Francis Ngannou to, kind of bet on yourself, believe in yourself, and you'll kind of, if you put in enough hard work, like we saw, his MMA career itself, the takedown defense is astronomical in comparison to what it was. If you work on yourself, if you bet on yourself, you will kind of get what you want. And if you put the work in, and if you, leaving the UFC, the biggest organization in the world with the most eyes on you, cannot have been easy for Francis Ngannou. And now look what's happened. He's left the UFC, biggest promotion, most eyes on him. He's the most talked about guy today, without a doubt. He's the most talked about. McGregor could say, I'm announcing my fight for the end of the month. But Francis Ngannou is signed for the PFL. If the UFC are clever, they put out something massive today. They give McGregor a fight. They announce the return of a big fighter. They sort of, they announce that Dana White jumps on one of his lives and try and steal the limelight back, because it's all about the PFL today.
Yep.
And especially because the UFC card this weekend coming up is piss poor. The main event is Mackenzie Dern versus Angela Hill. is this weekend's main event.
Yeah.
There's fights up and down the card that are not bad. There's not
Go ahead.
bad fights. I'm excited to see Chase Cooper come back. I thought Latifi had retired, but apparently not. Vanessa Demopoulos versus Karolina Kovacevic. Demopoulos is on a bit of a run now. I think she lost the UFC debut. Come back with three straight wins now. She's an exciting prospect. Diego Ferreira returns against Michael Johnson. Great fight.
That's a good
Buckley
fight.
is always fun.
Yep.
So is Andre Fiallo. Lupi Godinez. I'm a massive fan of Lupi Godinez.
Yep.
Another girl I'm a massive fan of, Emily Ducote, who, she disappointing for me, Ducote's last fight against Angela Hill, because she ate Jessica Pene's leg up in that first one, and then barely threw a leg kick. Edmund Shabazian returns against Anthony Hernandez. Shabazian coming off the back of those 3 devastating losses, Derek Brunson, Jack Manson, and Imanov. Faced Lugumbia last time out, bounced back with a win, looked very good in that one. And he's facing Anthony Hernandez, a guy who, it's kind of made his name off of submitting Rodolfo Vieira. He has.
It was surprising.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
He's coming off. He's on 3 straight wins. Then the main event, Mackenzie Dern versus Angela Hill. Exactly.
I really like Angela Hill. She's very cool.
Fight every weekend if you let her. She's high pace, lots of output. Has got a hole in her ground game. Mackenzie Dern is ground game. She's got a hole in her stand up. She's got the biggest hole in her game is her wrestling. Without a shadow of a doubt, she cannot wrestle to save her life. So if she gets it down to the floor, I think it's Dern's. If it's kept standing, Angela Hill outpoints her all day.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
As much as it sounds ridiculous, I mean, it's in the apex for a start as well. So that kind of says all you need to know. But that we're in this sport. This should directly affect how we sort of, write next week or how we think of the sport. I don't care who wins this fight. It doesn't affect the division, in my opinion, who wins this fight. Because Mackenzie Dern, if she wins, she doesn't trouble the top of the division. Angela Hill, if she loses this fight, she'll be 15-13.
Yeah,
which is a record of someone that should be nowhere near the UFC. But then she'll go and put 3 or 4 wins together. The thing is, I just don't care about this fight now that Francis Ngannou has signed.
I know
the PFL. More will come out on that later on today. I'm sure later on in the week, as and when more details come out about this, because it's the biggest news that we've had in a long time since the return of John Jones.
Yes,
maybe
easily.
Let's be honest here, or since the return of Conor McGregor for TUF. The UFC haven't had an announcement like this in a long time. I mean, I think probably what got the most clicks for the UFC last week was McGregor pushing Michael Chandler.
It's tough. That stuff's going to happen all the time. It's just not shocking anymore. Yeah,
the PFL themselves in their press release email here, most expansive and most valuable athlete signing in MMA history, and it is hard to deny that. It is really hard to deny that.
This is big. This is a big, and it's not. Oh man, how do you compare it to like Fedor going with Affliction and Strikeforce over the UFC? Because Fedor was the lineal champion. I don't know. I feel like this might be bigger because Francis directly said no and walked away from his title in the UFC. Fedor was the lineal title holder, but it never seemed like he wanted to bother with the UFC just because he didn't like the people who were managing it. But the parallels are all there, aren't they?
Exactly. And look, the pay-per-view, the super pay-per-view super fight division offers 50% revenue from the pay-per-views to the fighters.
Huge.
He'll make his debut in mid-2024, as you said. Commented on it, Ngannou said, "I'm very excited for this game-changing partnership with the PFL to continue my MMA fighting career in the PFL superweight division. I believe PFL's fighter-first culture and global vision, including developing the sport in Africa, With that, I'm also proud to announce I will serve as chairman of PFL Africa, which will be the leading MMA organization on the continent, providing great African fighters the opportunity to compete on a global platform.
Awesome.
It's groundbreaking strategic partnership with Francis Ngannou, the greatest heavyweight MMA fighter in the world. Hard to deny that.
Yep.
Yes, he hasn't fought John Jones, but he went out on the top. He's never lost as champion. You know, it's expanded to become the first true global sports league, global league in sports with international regional leagues spanning all continents. You know, we had the PFL Europe competition going on now. You know, Dakota Ditcher, Simeon Powell, and alike, they're competing now. They're not lying, these guys, when they say they are. You know, they describe themselves here as the number one fastest growing global sports league and the number 2 MMA company worldwide on all metrics.
Fine. Yeah.
They can't say that and it not be true.
Yeah.
Phenomenal stuff from the PFL to sign Francis Ngannou. And I think that is very much taken over the podcast, and I'm happy about it.
Man, we're going to lead off with that as the title of the podcast, and people are going to have to listen for 45 minutes before we're like, oh shit, this just broke. But we would have felt like idiots if we did the whole show and they were like, oh, Francis.
We started off talking about Kim being a shithouse and MMA refereeing and judging, and now we're finishing on the most expansive and valuable athlete signing in MMA history, Francis Ngannou to the PFL. Lead with that title, and we are laughing.
All right, good stuff. Frazer, have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Nice one. Thank you.